Good day everyone! So we are the Group 6 and we will now tackle about Module 8. This module discusses the accounting for provisions, revenue contracts, employee benefits, and share-based payment. It includes the recognition, measurement, presentation, and disclosure in the financial statements. The standards and procedures to account and record these topics are also covered under this module. According to Benjamin Franklin, an investment in knowledge pays the best interest. As an aspiring accountant, we must invest in learning and exploring different areas that would lead us on our best interest in the future. For the learning objectives of Module 8, we have 4 objectives. First, define the provision, revenue contracts, employee benefits, and share-based payments. Second, understand the recognition, measurement, presentation, and disclosure in the financial statements. Third one, explain the application of accounting principles for provision and revenue contracts. And the last one is differentiate between employee benefits and share-based payments. Good day everyone! I am Hannah Bilargado and now we will discuss about provisions and contingent liability. So, provisions is a special case of liability. This is different from other liabilities na alam natin such as accounts payable, notes payable, and mortgage payable, in which the figures are measurable and with an exact recognition date. Provision is an existing liability of uncertain timing or uncertain amount. Furthermore, in this discussion, we will tackle more why provision is considered as liability with uncertain amount and timing. Provision is an existing liability of uncertain timing or uncertain amount. Primarily, provision is all about uncertainties. Dito pumapasok yung mga situation wherein maaring magkaroon tayo ng babayaran in the future, but hindi natin alam kung kailan at kung magkano siya eksakto. Papasok din yung different condition, terms, and agreement na sinang-ayunan or kinasabwatan ng kumpanya, but they are kung saan they are willing to take risk and responsibility kung ano man yung mangyari. Such as yung mga nangyari sa warranties, yan, ganyan, yung mga, at minsan, unfortunately, nangyayari din yung sa entity yung pagkakaroon ng mga tax dispute and some other law concerns or environmental issues. So, provisions should be take note na are reported separately dun sa ibang mga iba pa nating mga alam ng mga liability. It is a required settlement. Mas mabigat siya compared dun sa ibang mga liability since dito nga pumapasok yung mga lawsuits, kaya siya ay kino-considered as separate line item. Provision is also an estimated liability, both probable and measurable. Though it has uncertain timing and amount, according to paragraph 25 of PAS 37, it provides that the use of estimates is an essential part of the preparation of financial statements. It is considered probable because there's a 50% more chance that it could happen, and measure through the help of appropriate estimates. So, dito, ang atin kailangan is yung best estimate. The estimate should be reasonable, kapani-paniwala. Here, we will also learn how to recognize a provision, estimate amount by analyzing and familiarizing ourselves by knowing the important requisites to recognize a transaction as provisions. So, how did we recognize a transaction as provision? A provision is recognized when an entity has a present obligation, could be either legal or constructive, as a result of past event. So, ang first condition ay kailangan para masabi na provision siya, it should conform to the definition of a liability. Second one, it is probable, meaning there is a 50% more chance na mangyayari that an outflow of resources embodying economic benefits will be required to settle obligation. And to settle obligation, it could be cash or non-cash consideration or transactions like services or kaya pagta-transfer of assets to settle the obligation. Third condition is a reliable estimate can be made of the amount of the obligation. Based from the sa standard natin, we are always aiming for best estimate. We should always have a basis, a concrete basis and evidence. That's why we are seeking for professional advice such as estimation kung magkano magagasto sa isang kunyari ay may kinasangkutan na lawsuit yung entity or tax dispute. So, very important na magkaroon tayo ng reliable estimate. And if these conditions, these three conditions are not met, no provision shall be recognized. Dapat present tong tatlong ito. Examples of provisions. We have 5 examples. First one is warranties. It coincides with constructive obligation arising from an obligating event, which is the sale of the product with warranty. Assume natin na yung isang kumpanya is mag-release ng 1,000 units ng bago nilang phone unit. And hindi naman natin alam kung ilan yung mga customers na maaaring bumalik na masasabi na merong defect yung sarili nilang model. Kaya consider din ang warranties as example of provisions. But in other instances, kaya nagkakaroon ng confusions, warranties could also be an example of contingent liability. So, maintindihan natin mamaya kung bakit. Second one is environmental contamination. When a company failed to comply with some environmental law or accidents such as spilled oil or contamination of chemical. O yung mga environmental concerns or issue na hindi naman natin ina-expect na mangyayari. So, consider din siya as provision. Third one is the commissioning or abandonment cost. Example of this is when an entity purchases an oil field. The entity has a legal obligation to remove or withdraw the site at the end of the contract. The cost of abandonment or decommissioning shall be recognized as a provision. Yon, isa din yung sa example ng provision since hindi naman natin alam kung hanggang kailan tayo dun sa field na yon. As long as meron tayong nadidig na oil, may nakukuha tayong langis, so go tayo. Kumbaga, hindi titigil yung entity kung hanggat wala naman sila napapala dun sa isang site na yon. And dun pumapasok na example siya na provision, yung cost of withdrawal dun sa mismong site. Fourth one is court case. Lawsuits like patent infringement, tax dispute with BIR, accidents where an entity has a contract to fulfill is considered as provision. Fifth one is guarantee. Guarantee occurs when an entity accepts responsibility for an obligation if the party with primary responsibility is unable to settle the obligation. Ito yung kunyari, nagpautang yung entity sa another entity. Pero nagpautang sila knowing na hindi nila alam kung kailan maibabalik sa kanila yung pera. Ganun. So, these are the examples of provisions. So, for further explanation dun sa first condition natin to recognize a provision, we have here present obligation. So, in order for us to recognize a provision, kailangan daw it is a present obligation. Could be either legal or constructive. Legal obligation is an obligation arising from a contract through explicit or implicit means, written or verbally, legislation, or other operations of law. Therefore, this is enforceable by law, and if not settled, there is a corresponding sanction leading to some filing of lawsuits, thus creating provisions. Constructive obligation, on the other hand, is an obligation that derives from an entity's actions where nangyayari ito yung mga obligation due or as a result of entity's actions. Yan. The entity has indicated to other parties that it will accept certain responsibilities. And as a result, the entity has created in the other parties a valid expectation that it will discharge those responsibilities. And ang best example niya is yung warranties. Na, di ba pag kukuha tayo or bibili tayo ng phone unit, example, ulit ay phone. So, the entity accept na meron silang certain responsibilities doon through they are assuring the customers sa pamagitan ng pagbibigay nga ng warranty. And as customers, nabibigyan tayo ng assurance and we also gain expectation na maganda nga yung ating phone unit, and in case na may karoon ng defects is pwede natin siyang ibalik or pwede natin siyang papalitan or ipaayos. And thus creating provisions. Kumbaga, nagiging expense din siya dun sa company later. So, let's now tackle naman what is past event and obligating event. Obligating event gives rise to a present obligation and an event that creates a legal or constructive obligation because the entity has no realistic alternative but to settle the obligation created by the event. From the word obligating event, this refers to events or circumstances that gives rise to an obligation, kung saan walang magagawa yung entity but to comply or settle to the certain obligation. And in summary, past event that leads to present obligation is called obligating event. So we have here the pro forma journal entry to record the recognition of a provision. We debit expense and we credit estimated liability. An accounting provision cannot be created in anticipation of a future event. Ang lagi nating basis is past event. And for the second condition, for us to recognize that a transaction is a provision, it should have a probable outflow of economic benefits. An outflow of resources is regarded as probable if the event is more likely than not to occur, meaning the probability that the event will occur is greater than the probability that it will not occur. From the word probable, so it should have a 50% likely to occur para masabi din nga natin na ang isang transaction ay provision. So for the third condition to recognize if a transaction is a provision, it should have a reliable estimate. As mentioned earlier, it is a must that there's a reliable estimation. Hindi lang maaari na gut feeling natin or nag-conclude sarili natin conclusion ang pagbibigay ng figures. Kailangan mayroon tayong pinagbasehan. Bilang pagbabalik, according to paragraph 25 of PAS 37, the use of estimates is an essential part of the preparation of financial statements and does not undermine their reliability. From the phrase na it does not undermine their reliability, meaning estimation does not lessen the reliability of determining the amount and timing to record a certain transaction. Mas maganda pa nga na meron tayong estimation rather than following our gut feeling. So, we aim for best estimate. Although estimate is an essential part of the preparation, as accountants, we have the responsibility to distinguish if an estimate is still reliable. Meron kasing estimation na napapalayo na or hindi na siya yung kapani-paniwala. So, as an accountant, we need to analyze pa. Hindi porket nag-arrive na tayo with this certain estimation is okay na. Kailangan mas kapani-paniwala pa rin yung magiging estimate natin. And when no reliable estimate can be made, no liability is recognized. So let's now move on contingent liability. Contingent liability is a possible obligation arising from past events whose existence will be confirmed only by the occurrence or non-occurrence of some uncertain future event not wholly within the entity's control, or a present obligation that arises from a past event but is not recognized because either it is not probable that an outflow of resources embodying economic benefits will be required to settle the obligation, or the amount of the obligation cannot be measured with sufficient reliability. So, provisions and contingent liability have a similar characteristic since both have uncertain amount or timing. Kaso, compared to provision, ang contingent liability have a higher chance of not of non-occurrences. So, malaki yung posibilidad na hindi siya mangyayari. Kaya, kinakategorize ang contingent liability as immaterial. Therefore, hindi siya nire-recognize sa ating financial statements. Examples of contingent liability are yung mga pending lawsuits. Siya yung common na contingent liability example because the outcome is unknown. Sometimes, even warranty. Kaya sabi ko, pwede rin i-categorize ang warranty as provision or contingent liability depending on the uncertainty. So, magkakaroon talaga tayo ng confusion about provision and contingent liability kasi hindi sila nagkakalayo sa isa't isa. So, ngayon, what are the differences between provision and contingent liability? Paano ba natin madidistinguish ng isang transaction para masabi natin siya na provision or contingent liability? In general sense, all provisions are contingent because they are uncertain in timing or amount. The term contingent is used for terms that or items that are not recognized because their existence will be confirmed by occurrence or non-occurrence of one or more uncertain future events not within the control of the entity. The contingent liability is used for liabilities that do not meet the recognition criteria. Kapag sinabi natin contingent liability, it is probable or measurable reliably, while provision is not probable and not measurable reliably. So, here we have a table. We have the differences between provision and contingent liability. Kaya nga sinabi natin kanina, provision, it is a present obligation from arising obligating event from past events. Samantalang kapag naman contingent liability, siya lang ay possible obligation. In provision, it could be probable or measured reliably. But in contingent, masasabi natin siya na present obligation. Kaso, hindi rin siya may considered na provision kasi hindi siya probable and not measured reliably. In provision, it is recognized. Recognized siya in the financial statement since material siya. While contingent liability naman, it is not recognized in financial statement kasi immaterial siya. But in some cases, lalo na kapag nakaka-affect yung figures, estimation, or yung transaction under contingent liability, so kino-consider din natin siya minsan na or nire-recognize sa financial statements. But it depends dun sa circumstances or situation. So, how do we treat contingent liability? Ulitin lang natin, contingent liability is not recognized in the financial statement kasi kino-considered siya as immaterial. Kasi malaki yung kanyang higher chance of non-occurrence. So, a contingent liability shall not be recognized in the financial statements but shall be disclosed only. And the requirement for disclosure are a brief description of the nature of the contingent liability. Second, an estimate of its financial effects. Third, an indication of the uncertainties that exist. The possibility of any reimbursement. If a contingent liability is remote, means 10% or less likely to occur, so no disclosure is necessary. So, yun lamang po yung aking part. Have a great day. Thank you!